Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you for being here today with us for this talk, Scope X, the path to surprise breaches. I'm excited to be here also as a part of the SINCON this year. Thanks for the organizers and the awesome sponsors, EC Council and VSEN. Before we get started, I'm going to go through a very quick introduction about myself. My name is Meisam Eslahi. I'm a cybersecurity practitioner interested in both reactive and proactive cybersecurity services. I'm a cybersecurity consultant, researcher, and blogger as well. At the moment, I'm working as a senior director at EGS, EC Council Global Services. I would be more than happy to connect to all of you via LinkedIn or Twitter, whichever works better for you. Together we can share and together we can learn for sure. So here is the agenda for the today talk. We will start with the concept of the Scope X and unknown risks. We will continue with the threat hunting, which is a proactive approach that may help us to effectively address the issues caused by the Scope X. And finally, we have a brief review of the threat hunting in the subdomains, just as an example to elaborate the technical part of this webinar. So the Scope X, the land of the unknowns. I think everyone agreed to the point that the pandemic has changed our life in many ways. It's not only about lives, it's about the businesses as well. So every businesses must go through a rapid digitalization to just survive in this situation. Based on the reports, what that's supposed to be done within 7 to 10 years just happened in less than a year. And nothing wrong with that actually, but this rapid growth may brought a lot of risk to our environments, such as lack of readiness, lack of visibility, and in overall, we may provide more attack surfaces to the attackers. It wasn't a really big surprise to me when the bug crowd reported that nearly 30% of the cyber attacks carried out via the unauthorized and unknown assets. This is what I call it the Scope X. Actually, Scope X is not only covers the assets, it could be any unregistered, unattended, unauthorized, and unknown things within our organizations, people, process, and technology. Technically, these are a bunch of the unknowns, and accordingly, they are out of our radars, and we have no protection around them because what we don't know, and we cannot protect what we don't know. So this is not actually a new term, but in my opinion, we should pay attention. We should pay more attention to these unknowns in our environments. So, for example, one of the good examples of the Scope X and the unknowns is the subdomains. Why I say it so? Because in almost every engagement, I ask client, do you know how many subdomains you have at the moment for your main domain? And in most of the cases, they replied like, we are not sure. It's because we may have 100 and 1,000 subdomains for our main domain. In most of the cases, they are not well maintained. They are not inherit the cyber security controls from the parent domain. And technically, they are out of the radars. So when the things are out of radars and out of our monitoring scope, we may not able to fully protect them. So this is where we should think twice actually. Shall we assume protection when it comes to the unknowns and to the Scope X? In general, we have two types of cybersecurity, as all of you know, the reactive and proactive. In the reactive, normally we assume the protect. We make sure to place all the security controls, security solutions, and monitoring systems in the different layers. Then we keep monitoring, and in case something happens, we trigger the incident response and digital forensics. So I came across a very interesting report by the IBM, which says only 80% of the cyber attacks could be detected by automated security tools, SOC Tier 1 and SOC Tier 2. Around 20% remain undetected. This could be because of the 0 day, because of the sophisticated technique used by the cyber criminals, but in my opinion, it could be partially because of the Scope X and the unknowns. We may have a lot of unknown zone in our environment. We are not even aware of their existence, and definitely we are not aware of the risk, and there will be no protection for them. That's why, in addition to the reactive security, which is integral part of every strategy of for securing any company, it would be a good idea to consider being proactive. Means we assume the breach. We consider that an attacker successfully breached to our network, and then we try to look for the traces, keep hunting, and we proactively try to find the vulnerabilities, the security issues, and fix them before the attacker abuses them. So the threat hunting is one of the technical proactive cybersecurity services. It's human driven and must be done iteratively, which simply means that is not a one-time job. Actually is a continuous process. In general, we have two types of the threat hunting, structured and unstructured. So let's start with the unstructured one, which is totally data driven. Means a threat hunter go through a bunch of huge volume of the logs, and based on the experience look for any deviation of the standard behaviors. On the other hand, the structured threat hunting work around the educated guess or the hypothesis. We may know that we are specifically looking for the certain type of the attack. We know what type of data we should collect and what are the steps and the tools we may use to look for any evidence of that particular cyber attack. So apart from that, the threat hunting could be work around entity, for example, the high value assets or the high risk users. This is what we call it entity driven threat hunting. It could be based on the specific threat actors and the technique used by them to look for any specific pattern of a particular attack. Or it could be a intel driven. For example, our threat intelligence report team reported that recently there is a threat actor which is focused on the certain business sectors, and if by chance we are in the same sector or we are using the same technology, it could be give us some idea about what we should look for and hunt for. So it could be a hybrid approach, which is a combination of all of these three. We look for the specific users, specific vulnerabilities, and look for the particular cyber attack. So regardless of the type of the threat hunting, in general, there are a few success factors. So it's start with the high level one, like a mindset, awareness, priorities, capabilities, and how well the different teams in our organizations coordinate and collaborate with each other. But if I want to divide it, if I want to talk about the main factors, I could divide them into the three main one. Started with the total visibility, data quality and availability, and situation awareness. So total visibility means that we know about ourselves and we know about our enemy. So this is how we can protect ourselves. This is what it actually taught us by the Swansea. So, but there are a few challenges there. For example, a rapid shift to the remote work, the cloud infrastructures, third-party vendors, shadow IT, BYOD, when our employees use their own devices in the network place. When it comes to the data quality and availability, any misconfiguration on human errors, limited access and controls. For example, I have a log, but which is simply disabled and I have no access to that. Or it could be infrastructure overload and failure, or even the cyber attack. Because of the cyber attack, the data wipe and I have no access to certain data which is needed to look for any evidence of malicious activities. Situation awareness plays a very important role in the threat hunting. But the main challenge is that in most of the cases, we have no baseline about what is good, what is bad in our environment. Because based on the what is the good and what is bad, we can search for the deviation. It may be because of the poor data management, poor analysis, and also diversity and dynamic nature of our environment. So there are a lot of technical things that we can do to overcome these issues, but in general, we should proactively discover our asset and discover our resource, to collect the data about them, understand the nature of the each assets, the business logic behind each assets. So we should validate the data and classify them, and then we should form a baseline threat modeling to find a potential model, the potential threat around our organizers and the current setup and limitations. So let's make it simple and short. Just discover the unknowns and start threat hunting. So When it comes to the subdomains, as we discussed earlier, we may have thousands of the subdomains in our environment. That's why the data collection and data validation is very important. So I just simply design a very brief process about threat hunting preparation for the subdomains. However, it could be adapted to any other type of assets in our environments. So it starts with the data collection, could be passive, could be active. For example, we should go through the DNS, the subdomains enumeration to find a list of the existing subdomain for our environments. So every subdomains must be validated. For example, simply to check their to check if they are up and leave or is just simply a false positive. Once we validate the data, we can go through the classification based on the desired parameter. For example, in this example, I only go for the subdomains which runs over the port 80 and port 443, which is the standard for the HTTP and HTTPS. And then we have to go through analysis to look for the potential threat, to look for the potential security issues, for example, a known vulnerabilities. And once everything documented, we can pass this to our threat hunting team and ask them to come up with some educated guess and hypotheses and look for the potential threats. So if you are wondering how we should take care of this process, either is a manual observation, is it automation by tools and scripts, or the advanced analytic techniques, it's a combination of all of them. Three are needed. So, as well said by my good friend Charles, we should spend time finding what we don't know and then we automate what we know. Normally, we combine the manual observation with the advanced analytical techniques to look for the new cybersecurity attacks. And once we identify them, we can automate the things. So the first step in the subdomain threat hunting is a data collection. There are a lot of techniques to enumerate the DNSs and a lot of tools out there. I'm not going to talk about them in this webinar. I prefer to more talk about a type of potential observation that we could have here. Once we collect the subdomains, we may observe a series of the odd numbers. For example, there is an unusual number of the subdomains. We used to have only a few subdomains for our businesses, and suddenly we face a newly created subdomains in the mass volume. Or it could be the unusual pattern. For example, any subdomains with the unusual name, a strange patterns, unusual lengths, and to be simple, all the unknowns. Something that we have never encountered before in our environment, and they are not look familiar for us, but they exist, they're newly created, and no one aware of them. So depends on the services run behind the subdomains. They may come with a different names. I just listed a few well-known ones like the FTP, mail, blog, SMTP, admin, my favorite one. So it could be based on the stages that they are residing at the moment. For example, development, test, stage, staging, UAT, and so on. So the very important point here is that we should use a combination of them. For example, my top favorite one is admin or login and API or portal, which is in the test or stage environment. So once we collect the data, we should validate them. I just write a very simple script here. Definitely you can use your own creativity, your own experience, your own knowledge to develop more validation process based on your agenda. So here I just try to understand which subdomains are up and leave and which one is down. So the data validation effectively help us to narrow down the data to the quality one. So actually we can deduct the amount of the unwanted data like false positive from our data set. So when it comes to the classification, again, it depends on the desired parameter, depends on the case, depends on the situation. But in this example, I only look for all the subdomains which is running over the port 80 and port 443. I also collect the response code for the HTTP to have a better understanding about what is going on in my environment. So the classification is very important to have a good situational awareness. we can understand and record the normals, and then we look for any significant changes. If there is no any operational or business logic behind that, that could be a sign of the malicious activities. So when it comes to the analysis, as we just said, it could be a start with the manual analysis. Manual analysis is always one of my favorite things, especially during the training stage. But observing thousands of the subdomains one by one is not practical. However, there is a common practice which using of the automated tools to screenshots all the subdomains in one go, and then we go through navigating the different images, and any screenshot attract our attention, then we can go and dig more. So via the screenshots, we may face a lot of interesting things. For example, the error messages, expose sensitive information, default banner, relieve the technology used, login pages, pages leaks business information, and a lot of other juicy informations. When we're talking about a large scale manual observation, it's not that practical. So here I just listed 4 tools that works well for me. I'm not whitelisting any of other tools. If you know any tools better than them, please do not hesitate to introduce to us as well. So, but apart from the manual and automation, we are mostly help us to look for the some things which is easy to understand. When things become complex, means the data is large in the volume. The data have the velocity changing rapidly over the time, or the data comes with the different varieties, and the attackers is very skilled one using a very sophisticated attack. We definitely need something more than the tools and more than the ordinary threat hunter. This is where we should get aid of the advanced analytic techniques such as the data mining, machine learning, pattern recognition, neural networks, and so on. When we feed our AI-driven engine with the data, it could be supervised and unsupervised, but at the end, they help us to find the new TTPs, detection rule, and even behavioral analysis. So let's have a quick example in the last slide. We assume that our CTI monitoring system reported a newly discovered web-based botnet targeting the Microsoft Windows system. The botnet exploit several vulnerabilities. So any of my machine behind any of the subdomains that run the Microsoft operating system could be vulnerable to this botnet. So the botmaster could get control over on my machines and even either steal information from them or force them to be part of the botnet command and control mechanism. So 2 educated guesses came into my mind. The first one is not the hunt. I prefer to call it detection because it's working around the IOCs. So I go to check 2 things. 1, any system in my network communicating with those IP or URLs associated with the botnet. So I can find the list of the known IP, the known URL, the known host name, the known subdomains from the public available CTI databases, and check in my access log if any of my systems communicating with them. But another thing which is more important, I would like to know, is any of my machines part of that botnet? What if the botmaster take control of my server, which is one of the services left behind one of the forgotten subdomains, and then use them as a command and control servers? So, but as you know, all of these techniques are more into the detection and work based on the known IOCs. What if the attack is a 0-day? There is no IOC around that. This is where we need a behavioral analysis. Get the help of the machine learning, get the help of the neural networks or AI or any other statistics or analytical techniques to look for the pattern. For example, one of the hypotheses about the botnet command and control activity detection says that the botmaster may use the application layer protocol HTTP over the port 80 to communicate with the command and control in the periodic format. So it's not easy to find a periodic pattern in our environment, because there are a lot of applications that may pose the same behavior. For example, the updaters, the downloaders, or any business related application which continuously and periodically connect to the server and fetch the business related informations. That's why we need something more advanced to feed the data, supervise the data, and then, for example, like the decision tree, to categorize the different type of the periodicity of the behaviors. I have published 2 papers to detect the HTTP botnets in the computer and in the mobile environment, and one of the factors is the periodicity level. If you are interested, feel free to contact me and I would be more than happy to share those information with you. So our short talk ends here, but the threat hunting is a never-ending battle. Discover the unknowns, be proactive, dive into the beats, and hunt the beasts.